Her species worshipped silence, until a human's laughter taught them to live again. The Averial were known across the galactic archives as the Quiet Ones. They lived in crystalline spires suspended above their ocean worlds, moving like drifting ghosts beneath shimmering moonlight. Their skin was pale as frost, their voices never rose above a breath, and their entire civilization was built on the sacred principle of absolute silence. To them, sound was violence, a violation of the sacred harmony of existence. Even the waves on their seas were muted by engineered tidal fields, so that nothing disturbed their meditative drift. Outsiders who visited the Averial homeworld were required to undergo days of preparation, neural dampeners, vocal suppressors, and mental conditioning to restrain any impulse to speak or laugh. Few outsiders ever stayed. Most found the endless hush unbearable. Then came Elias Cade, the human technician sent to repair the failing orbital energy mirrors that kept the Averial's delicate climate stable. He read all the instructions. He signed the agreements. But Elias was, by nature, a man whose soul overflowed with sound, with humming tunes while he worked, spontaneous jokes, and laughter that could shake walls. He tried to suppress it. Truly, he tried. But when he first stepped into the glassy atrium of the High Council Tower and saw the Averial greeting him with slow, soundless gestures, something inside him cracked. Elias had been working for days in the void, alone, seeing no one, speaking to no one. Now, surrounded by living beings moving like dream figures in an endless hush, he felt an overwhelming flood of relief and absurdity. A stray thought, I wonder what would happen if I sneezed right now, spiraled in his mind. And then it happened. A laugh burst from him, loud and sudden. The sound bounced off the crystalline walls, slicing the hush like a blade. The Averial froze mid-motion, their luminous eyes wide in shock. A senior priestess dropped her ceremonial staff, hands trembling as if she'd heard an explosion. Elias clamped his hands over his mouth, eyes huge. He whispered frantic apologies, but the damage was done. He expected them to banish him instantly, or worse. Instead, the Averial simply stood there, staring at him as though he were some impossible creature. Days passed. They allowed him to stay and complete his repairs, perhaps out of confusion or perhaps curiosity. During his work on the surface, Elias found himself humming softly to calm his nerves. One day, a young Averial attendant named Taylor approached him, stepping closer than any Averial had dared. She watched his mouth, tilting her head curiously. When he paused, she gestured at him, fingers trembling. Elias hesitated, then slowly let out a small, controlled laugh. Taylor flinched at first, but then she mirrored the sound, a thin echo, fragile as moonlight on water. Elias beamed at her, and she tried again. Her second attempt was stronger, carrying a strange, bright warmth. Word of this spread like ripples through the silent halls. A few others gathered to watch. They formed loose circles around Elias while he worked, silently observing as he whistled, sang snippets of old Earth ballads, and chuckled at his own clumsy repairs. They began to copy him in secret, their voices trembling as they experimented with tiny giggles or soft hums in the privacy of the shadowed alcoves. One night, Elias was working late, muttering a series of jokes to himself to stay awake. He stumbled over a tool, and in his exhaustion, let out a booming, unstoppable laugh. A sound so genuine, so purely human, that it reverberated through the entire spire. Instead of horror, a strange collective shiver ran through the Averial halls. One by one, shapes began to appear in the corridors, shimmering figures moving closer, drawn by something they had never dared to feel. Taylor approached first, then others. They opened their mouths tentatively, as though unveiling a forbidden shrine. Then, in halting chorus, they tried to laugh. The first attempts were sharp, broken, almost painful. But Elias didn't shrink away. He threw back his head and laughed harder, more freely, until the walls almost seemed to vibrate with the warmth of it. Slowly, like a glacier cracking under spring's first sun, the Averial began to laugh with him. Shaky, uncertain, but alive. Tears, something rare among them, welled in their translucent eyes as their bodies convulsed in new, joyous waves. For the first time in their endless, cold existence, they felt breath fill their chests with something more than air. They felt life. Over the following weeks, the silence that had defined them for centuries unraveled. Small pockets of laughter spread among the spires. Children giggled in echoing corridors. Elders learned to sing low, vibrating hymns that harmonized with ocean winds. The priests, once guardians of absolute hush, found themselves humming softly as they meditated. Elias, stunned and moved beyond words, became more than a technician. He became a living symbol, the bringer of sound, as the Averial began to call him. When he finished his repairs and prepared to leave, Taylor approached him with trembling hands. She placed one palm over his heart, then her own. "Thank you," she whispered, her voice like the first breath after drowning. Elias felt tears prick his eyes. He grinned and answered with a quiet laugh, softer this time, but no less radiant. As his ship lifted off, he looked back and saw them gathered on the glimmering terraces, waving in, astonishingly, calling out in their newly discovered voices. Over time, the galaxy heard whispers of a once silent people who now sent broadcasts full of songs, shared recordings of laughter like sacred artifacts, and invited guests to join festivals where they celebrated the miracle of sound. They built a monument on their highest spire, a crystalline sculpture of Elias laughing, his head tilted back, eyes bright, mouth open wide to the sky. Travelers came from every corner of the stars to see it, to hear the chorus of the Averial echo through the halls where silence once reigned. And when asked how it began, they would always answer, voices trembling with joy and awe. Her species worshipped silence, until a human's laughter taught them to live again.